For many in Laclede County, February 4, 2018 was shaping up to be a day spent enjoying the Super Bowl with family and friends. When a band of flash freezing conditions hit the area, it triggered collisions on slick roads all around Lebanon. Hundreds of motorists found themselves involved in pileups and stranded in frigid weather. First responders from all over Laclede County rushed to multiple accident scenes to assess injuries, render aid, and deal with fatalities. For demonstrating sacrificial service, whether dealing with a stranger or their closest neighbor, Laclede County First Responders are our 2019 Unsung Hometown Heroes.
It started out around 4 o'clock or shortly after 4 o'clock. We were called to a vehicle fire on North 5 in front of Ashley Park. When we arrived, we found a passenger vehicle that was involved in fire, and an occupant of that vehicle was removed by bystanders and was taken up the hill a little bit, and they were performing CPR on him. We kind of divided and conquered. We put a couple of people working on the fire and a couple of people rendering medical aid.
So I was driving home from training in Columbia at Winter Fire School, which happens every year, and I'd been gone the entire weekend. Sunday, obviously the weather started getting a little bad, so I left Columbia, started headed home, got around the lake area, and it was starting to get really slick, lots of slide-offs, so it slowed my travel down a little bit. But about the time I got to the Laclede County line, from Campton to Laclede County line, I had heard their call came out over the radio. I was in the training ride, so tried to edge my way there as quickly as possible. It was really, really slick, so I knew things were going to get really bad, so I made my way to the scene and started helping.
Following the treatment rendered on the scene, the accident victim was prepared for transport by ambulance to Springfield. Firefighter EMT David Wheeler was assigned to accompany the patient to Springfield.
So I got in the back of the ambulance. We started hearing radio traffic about the pileup towards Springfield. So we knew Springfield was not going to be an option because we couldn't get there. So we diverted to Lebanon at that time.
There were 2 other people involved in the accident. One of them had an injury to their leg and was a lower priority. We were trying to get a second ambulance to the scene, although about the same time the large pileup on the interstate happened, and so resources were stretched kind of thin.
When we started getting the calls on that Super Bowl Sunday, we was actually preparing to have a big Super Bowl party at the fire station, so we was getting everything together, and I just got back home from going to Walmart, and the snow hit, and it just became a chain reaction from there.
First responders from Lebanon Rural Fire Protection District were dispatched to multiple vehicle accidents at Bennett Spring and I-44 mile markers 128, 135, and 137 east of Lebanon. They then were called to a large accident with a possible fatality at the 138 mile marker east of Lebanon.
We were the first responding engine to that incident, and we really didn't know what we had. We ended up having to go to the opposite side of traffic to get to that incident, and once we got there, it was, just a pile of semis and cars all mixed together, and it's kind of, where do you begin? When we arrived at that incident, there was only 3 on board of my apparatus. We ended up having probably 7 to 10 arrive to assist with the process that went on for several hours.
As responders confirmed the fatality and secured that area, others began walking on the icy roadway, going from car to car to assess and identify the level of injuries. The accidents were in clusters, strung out along the highway. Additional first responders from area agencies were called to the scene to assist.
Me and Captain Hunter responded to that call. Driving down there was still slippery, and we had to go the wrong way on the interstate just to even arrive. And our job was to go kind of past the incident. And there were still cars in the median and the ditch and on the side.
Emergency medical services knew about this incident that was happening. They just couldn't get anybody to us. We were gridlocked in every direction. I had 911, called on the radio to 911 and had them notify Mercy Hospital that we were fixing to start shipping them a whole bunch of patients and that they needed to be ready for it. We transported roughly around 20 patients by personal vehicle. Several of them went by personal vehicle. We had some go in sheriff's cars. We had some go in fire trucks, and then some of the firefighters' vehicles that were on the scene. We had one lady with an $80,000 SUV show up, and she's like, "I can haul people," and she laid the seats down in her SUV, and we actually loaded backboarded patients up to transport them to the hospital, and we actually give them a escort with some of the firefighter vehicles. We actually give her an escort to the hospital because she was carrying a critical patient.
As the first responders cared for the critical patients, they also began moving into recovery mode, helping their stranded motorists shelter in place to escape the freezing temperatures and a fine mist. Eventually, a church bus arrived and delivered several motorists to shelter at Lebanon's Harvest Tabernacle Church. Looking back to the collisions east of Lebanon, first responders are grateful for a truck driver whose actions may have prevented more tragedies at the scene.
So the moment that stands out in my memory would be the semi-truck that possibly saved several lives at the time of the incident. There was several vehicles inches away from his bumper, and he jackknifed his truck into the median and to the cables, and there was families, there was kids, there was adults, there was older people, just all in one bundle right in front of his truck.
During the same time frame as the accidents on North Highway 5 and I-44 east of Lebanon, the Conway Volunteer Fire Department was responding to a series of accidents on I-44 west of Lebanon that involved over 100 vehicles.
My wife was actually making treats for the Super Bowl, and then the first call came out, and it was just light snow at that time. And she told me, she's like, "Well, will you be back before the game?" And I told her, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll be back in like an hour." And in fact, I didn't get home for about 9 more hours and almost completely missed the Super Bowl.
First responders were called to a single vehicle accident at the 118-mile marker. Then they responded to a much larger series of accidents at the 111-mile marker with entrapments and multiple patients. As they finished at the 111 incident, they were dispatched to the 106-mile marker.
It was big. It was a big scene, definitely. I wouldn't say it was mass chaos, but it was close to it. Multiple vehicles off into the ditch, people walking around, and just to be able to gather everybody into one point and figure out what's going on and find your injured is your biggest task. So with an incident that big, you're gonna have to just start at the front and work your way back. So you have multiple semis just entangled together with cars in between those, so you're bouncing from each vehicle, just looking, making sure everybody's okay. You're triaging patients, tagging them green, yellow, red, or black, and just finding everybody, making sure they're not stuck in their cars or they're not in between cars, and just filtering through everything. And where we were needing to extricate the patients out of the vehicle that they were in, it was like a quarter mile past all these semis that we have to go under tractor trailers and squeeze in between these tight spots just to get to it with hundreds of pounds of equipment that we're having to carry.
We had 27 total injuries. One of those included a fatality. We ended up transporting a total of 26 patients by ambulance.
While debriefing the large incident with multiple agencies, it was identified that it took only 1 hour and 5 minutes from the arrival of the first outside unit on the scene to the departure of the last ambulance carrying the last patient to the hospital.
It was amazing how we came together and did how fast we did it. With only me being on the department a year, that was the biggest scene I've been on, and kind of a little bit crazy for me, but it was amazing how quick we did it.
We work together with all of our neighboring Marshwood Fire Department, Lebanon Fire Department all the time, so we work well together. What really impressed me was that, we had ambulances from multiple counties away, not even just adjacent counties.
The cooperation, not just with the other departments, but with the community. I mean, we needed a school bus, and in minutes there was a school bus. So, the school district helped the business community, and you need a heated area to put a whole lot of people to, so they have a place to sit down and eat and get something to drink, and the rocking chairs stepped up.
I think the biggest part was the community support. I look back, I think all those people that was traveling up and down the highway that got stranded. We had people from Lebanon we had one guy here in Lebanon, his granddaughter had jumped out of a car just seconds before a semi slammed into it. The miraculous support, I guess you would say, not maybe of this world, but another world.
Reverend Don Anderson volunteers with other chaplains to provide emotional and spiritual support to emergency service workers, their families, and victims of emergency situations. After years of serving first responders, he admires the sacrificial nature of the first responders and their families.
First, the scripture that comes to mind when I think about working with first responders and talking to them is the one that says there's no greater love than a man would be willing to lay down his life for his friends. They are neighbors, truly helping neighbors. They live in this community, they work in this community. Whether they're paid or they're volunteers, they sacrifice so much for their communities and for each other. They're the ones that on a moment's notice, whether they're on call or not, when the call comes, they're willing to get up from the dinner table from their families or turn the car around and head to the fire station. If a situation has happened and it requires multiple departments, they're there willing to serve and sacrifice, willing to lay down their life if necessary for those who they live in that community with. Their job and their passion as whatever service that they serve in is to serve their community. And that to me is a true hero.
Super Bowl Sunday 2018 proved to be an exceptionally challenging day for Laclede County First Responders. When emergency situations arise, our Laclede County First Responders are called upon to run into danger, rescue the trapped and injured, and recover the deceased. For demonstrating sacrificial service, whether dealing with a stranger or their closest neighbor, Laclede County First Responders are our 2019 Unsung Hometown Heroes.